Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a really dark, graphic novel-style fairy tale of psychological decay. We're going to explore the cosmic unmaking of the world through a deeply philosophical lens. It's the story of the Crimson Doctor and the Infinite Zero. This is a chilling tale of rigid structures, inevitable ruin, and the ultimate truth of existence. So let's just jump right in. We kick things off at the Infinite Zero. Picture this, we're standing on a high mountain formed entirely of petrified remains. Up here, there's a cynical gargoyle of living fire, speaking with this leaden tongue of absolute vacancy, and he turns to a young, verdant dragon. He hisses a pretty grim warning. To reach this summit, one must understand the four acts that settled the borrowed debt of existence. It's such a striking image, right? It perfectly sets the stage for this story of inverted heroism and the unavoidable pull of the void. Act 1. The Law of the Gilded Cage. Soor Gargoyle tells the story of a figure known only as the Traveler. Now, the Traveler was absolutely terrified of aging, of death, and especially of the chaotic unpredictability of the void. So what does he do? He decides to literally legislate against existence itself. Using his vast wealth, he builds this fortified abbey made of heavy masonry and massive iron gates. It's his gilded cage. He builds it to freeze time, basically trying to escape the living friction of the world. But as you can probably guess, you can't just lock out the universe. Mistaking the heavy, stale air of total isolation for a peaceful sanctuary, yeah, that's his first fatal flaw. He doesn't realize what he's actually locked inside with him. You see, the Traveler's rigid laws inevitably trigger a psychological backlash. It's this desperate attempt to just freeze time. But by shutting out all change and denying life's fluid nature, he triggers what's called the creeping rot. This is the Thanos drive, essentially an internal psychic disease that is drawn to inflexible structures. Because he absolutely refuses to bend, the vibrant colors of his world start to fade, and his golden sanctuary slowly, quietly transforms into a magnificent, self-designed tomb. Act 2. Arrival of the Uncanny. Now this creeping rot acts like a beacon. It summons the hunger, which leads to a sudden, echoing knock coming from within the sealed walls themselves, and the entity that manifests, that's the Crimson Doctor. He doesn't even have a solid shape. He simply flows right through the heavy masonry. He perfectly personifies Sigmund Freud's concept of the uncanny. It's the idea of something secret and repressed that unexpectedly and often violently comes back to light. He wears a very familiar human title, Doctor, but make no mistake, he acts as a terrifying, shapeless cosmic force. At the same time, the Doctor totally embodies Friedrich Nietzsche's Overman. He's a force transcending human morality and physical limits. He doesn't operate by our laws. As this omnipresent force, he openly mocks the vanity of the Traveler's physical barriers. And honestly, isn't that kind of what we all do? We build our own little artificial routines and structures just to feel safe. But the Doctor acts as a force of chaotic creation and destruction, affirming absolute existence over that stagnant artificial order. So here we have this ultimate philosophical clash. On one side, the Traveler desperately clings to his rigid laws to hide his death drive and maintain this illusion of control. And against him is the Crimson Doctor, representing an ecstatic, aggressive frenzy that completely shatters that illusion. The Doctor doesn't see the Traveler as a victim. No, he sees him as a carrier of borrowed debt, which is energy stolen from the void to maintain an inflexible structure. And, well, the Doctor has come to collect. Act 3. The Four Acts of the Honest Guest. Let's zoom back out to our narrators on the mountain for a second. The gargoyle explains the exact steps of this inevitable unmaking, mapping out the inverted journey taken by the dragon's father self. It happens in 4 distinct acts of fading color. First, abandoning the roots, basically ceasing the painful effort of growing new life. Second, oxidizing the scales. This is shedding the emerald lie of vitality for the grim gray reality of oxidized lead. Third, exhaling the merciful fog, offering a suffocating gray mist to ease the burden of breathing. And finally, welcoming the Infinite Zero, eagerly trading living flesh for the void, eventually becoming the very petrified ridge they're standing on right now. Act 4. Architecture of Dissolution. Just as the honest guest surrendered, the Traveler's physical world undergoes its own terrifying unmaking. We can literally track this architectural decay. It starts with heavy masonry, establishing a rigid order. But then, stagnation summons the hunger, that creeping rot we talked about. After that comes the violent eruption of repressed cosmic energy, the melting of iron, as the Crimson Doctor dissolves those mighty gates into slag. Finally, the entire structure completely collapses into a fine gray powder. It becomes this beautiful, terrible, frozen ash. This brilliantly illustrates the core philosophy of our dark fairy tale. You see, the doctor shattering the gilded cage from within wasn't just some random act of destruction. This total unraveling affirms the chaotic flow of becoming. It's a stark realization that trying to escape existence and denying the void only guarantees your own magnificent dissolution. The self must be unmade. Kind of makes you wonder what walls you've built that might be quietly rotting from the inside, doesn't it?
Act 5. The Two Honest Guests.
Okay, so with the traveler's framework completely collapsed into the infinite zero, returning his borrowed debt to the cosmos, we return to the high mountain summit where our two narrators stand. They look at the exact same destruction but see two entirely different things. The gargoyle of living fire, representing the cynical shadow, looks at the gray dust and declares it final honesty. He argues that the void has simply corrected a structural error. But the young verdant dragon, representing messy, vibrant light, utterly refuses the silence. He shakes the leaden peak with an honest sound of chaotic becoming, boldly asserting the vital, violent truth of the passage itself. And then the dragon utters this incredibly powerful line: "If he was the honest guest of the silence, then I am the honest guest of the pulse." The dragon realizes that this leaden peak, this monument to death, is actually a stage. It's a place where the green script of living potential and the ink of negation can coexist. They are like parallel realities, two bubbles in a foam sharing a wall at the very edge of the void. As we close this dark explainer, we leave the Crimson Doctor standing amidst the frozen ash, serving as a dual witness to both the silence of the void and the vibrant energy of the pulse. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. When the inevitable happens and your own gilded cage crumbles to dust, which honest guest will you be?